Man, there's nothing quite like late night summers in Australia to make you very self conscious about all the background noise you can't get rid of. You can hear cicadas in the background. Well, nothing I can do about that. 2023 is nearing its end. It is the period just after Christmas, just before New Year's. It is the time when anyone who is still currently working, anyone who's got a project manager, anyone who's got something they have to do to show up for, is probably still showing up with an attitude that any major fixes or problems are probably January problems. Time of the year when everyone who makes things on the internet for people to engage with for free tends to reference the downturn in rates of advertising and the shift in the types of content that people are doing. It's the time we reflect and look back, and it just so happens that takes the form of listicles, some of the easiest things in the world to make. I like to use this time to cast my mind back over the work I've done in engaging critically with games and also of making videos, specifically making videos. I want to talk about some of the games I played this year, some of the videos I made this year, and also some of the articles I wrote this year that are over on my blog, and you can read them. When it comes to videos this year, I think of them as being in three categories. There are the short form videos, which are designed to come in at just under or just on 10 minutes. I have the longer form videos, which are meant to be more comprehensive and detailed and usually dig deep into a specific thing about something. And then I have the let's play streamy kind of things where it's just me and usually Fox playing something and talking about it together. This kind of content is interesting in different ways. I haven't put any of the streamy content on this list because I think all the time I spend with my partner is lots of fun. So, don't know what to tell you there. Still, the three short videos that I liked the most this year and I think you should check out. Number 3, Les Manly shouldn't be for sale. I got on a bit of a wild hair about this old Accolade adventure game called Les Manly. It's not a good game. I don't recommend it. In all the ways that you can look back at 90s games and be interestingly informed about the technology of the time, the most important thing you can learn about the game scene of the 90s from Les Manly is that there were just some incredibly embarrassing, cringy people involved in them right then and there. I do intend to go back and do like a long form breakdown of Les Manly with a partner, but I need someone on deck to explain Les Manly to, and I also need to always be able to point to this video and say, this game shouldn't be for sale. This should be archived for its own sake. Next, I really liked the video I made that was a dramatic reading of my original article on the game Carrion. I think when I write about games, I'm often trying to connect to an emotional state of explaining things about them. That there is a degree of fun to be had in performative dudgeon or just impassioned pleas for interest. I think Carrion is a game that inspired a very particular kind of behavior in me. I like the way that one reads. I like how it felt to perform. And most importantly, my favorite of the short videos for the year was my video on volume and the idea of the hero as a persona. That's a video about Mike Bithel's game Volume, which I liked a lot when I first played it, and I liked it even more when I went back and played it again for the video. It's just one of those things that scratches my particular brain space just perfectly. It's a thoughtful stealth game that nonetheless has an amazing framing in it. There's trans representation, I guess, of a sorts in it, and the game works within its own creative fictional space in a way that Bithell particularly excels at doing. I think Volume's a really great game. I really loved getting back to going and playing it again this year, and I think the video about it presents a lot of really fun thoughts, a lot of engaging critical ideas about what the game is doing with the pieces it's using and what that means. If there are short videos, then by natural extension, there are long videos. And I'm not going to like rank these because it's kind of hard to get anyone to commit to anything too long or too short. I'm just going to say I liked my video on the Dishonored TTRPG. I thought that the Mephidius RPG for Dishonored is an interesting beast. The lore book is amazing. Some of it fits into the Dishonest world totally seamlessly. It's beautiful work. The actual game system itself, I look at it and think, why would I not just use Blades in the Dark? And that question there is something I was able to spin into 20 minutes of talking, somehow. I also did a half-hour video about the Baldur's Gate 2 romances. I did this with no awareness that Baldur's Gate 3 was coming out this year. I just wasn't paying attention to that, and I didn't really care. I haven't got Baldur's Gate 3, and I don't expect to. But Baldur's Gate 2 presented me with like this archive of stuff to investigate, and I found that really fun to do. And also, I got to make some jokes that I really liked to make about how much Animan sucks, because Animan sucks. Then probably the biggest and most work of all the videos I did this year was my hour-long treatment of most of the Commander Keen games, in which I talked about the games as play structures, I talked about the game's own values, I talked about the way that that game interacts with the history of the first-person shooter and the creation of id Software, and like kind of how everything you know about video games probably traces back to just John Carmack defiantly making an EGA side-scrolling game because he thought of a way to do it, and about the character of Tom Hall. Tom Cruise also shows up in that video. It's a big one. It also has one of my most egregious editing errors of anything I made in a year, where I didn't include any of the audio of Tom Cruise talking in his video clip. Can't readily go back and fix it now. When it comes to the games I played this year, I want to divide them into the distinct categories of tabletop RPGs, board games, and video games. Just because I play a lot, and I don't want to just ignore some of these experiences because I happen to get a lot of fun out of one type. So, first of all, with TTRPGs, of all the TTRPGs I played this year, the best one is still, and always will be, Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition. The best edition. I haven't had a chance to play any of the other TTRPGs I've bought this year. I have Girl by Moonlight sitting next to me. I plan on running a game in it this month, but I haven't been able to yet. I'm sure it's great. I'm sure it's going to be really good. Forged in the Dark games are always, in my opinion, pretty bloody good. But yeah, just haven't gotten around to it on this one. When it comes to video games, the video games I played the most, or that I'd like to bring forward as like my favorites of the year, I guess is a better way of saying it, are Wingspan, which is a video game version of a board game I already loved. Wingspan's video game, I've sunk like 20 hours into it, and that's a game that I'm not playing it against people. I'm just booting it up and playing against an AI, single rounds, and then closing it again as a way to still the brainworms. And it's so lovely every time. It does feature a problem that's kind of unique to digital board and card games, which is if your opening sucks, in a real life game, you tough it out. But in a video game, it's very easy to go, look, I'm not inconveniencing anyone. Screw this. I'm not going to keep playing here. And I think that's probably bad behavior on my part. I think it's going to teach me bad habits about how to deal with adverse game states when I wind up playing it more with people. I played Lunark, which is a game highly anticipated by me. It's a step platformer in the Flashback vein that I at the time described as a game that's more about how Flashback feels than about how Flashback was. It's a really good, really charming game. I liked it a lot, and it has a big hug as a plot point. The game I liked the most, in video games at least, that I played this year was I Was a Teenage Exocolonist, which is a little frustrating because I Was a Teenage Exocolonist is a huge game. You could just play it and replay it dozens of times. But I played 1.5 routes before I made my video because I was under a time crunch, and I figured I'll get to the rest afterwards. And I haven't. It's real frustrating because I Was a Teenage Exocolonist is so good. The actual gameplay with card interactions and whatnot is just so exciting. I find that so lovely. It's just, I can't dedicate the time to sitting down and reading and mapping my way through one again right now. It's been a busy year. Still, game is an absolute top draw kind of game. I love it to bits, and I'm really so very grateful to the person who brought it to my attention. Board games, however, there's always a challenge when it comes to board games because I'm going to be playing the board games with people I love, and sometimes that means a board game that can get to the table faster is going to be more desirable just because I get to play it more often. Like, I've played more Draftosaurus this year than any other board game I can think of off the top of my head, just because Draftosaurus is something my sister is almost always down for. I have played a lot of Magic the Gathering with one of my nibblings, and I love playing with him, and we mostly just play dodgy, common, store-bought kind of decks that aren't very good. It's a really fun experience to connect to people with this kind of... So, setting those aside, and I guess honorable mention here goes to Louis Brez's Keep the Heroes Out, which is incredible. It's an incalculably excellent version of what it is, and I very much am considering getting video of it on Board Game Arena to just have more ways of showing and sharing it with people. The 3 games that I want to hold up as my favorites for this year. First of all, Block by Block. Cooperative game about uprisings against the police. I don't know why that might be particularly on my mind of late, but it's the idea that you can very clearly see the world in terms of people designed to enforce an oppressive state and people who are being oppressed. And when you do that, you realize that you have more in common with the people who are under the boot than the people wearing the boot. I think this game is also just mechanically wonderfully intricate. It creates these beautiful story moments that are very exciting. When things go wrong, they feel really wrong, and you can often feel like the whole game is like a ball just at the edge of your fingertips. You know if you touch it wrong, it's going to skitter away, but maybe, just maybe, you can get a grip on it. We had that moment when we played it together, and I wound up with a rampaging squad of students flipping, burning, and destroying a police car. That was cool. Flamecraft is my next favorite. I've heard some criticisms of Flamecraft that it's just pretty, like it doesn't deserve its success because its main selling point is that it's beautiful, which I guess I can understand someone having that complaint, but also it can jump up my butt because Flamecraft being visually splendid is part of what makes it easy to play. Flamecraft engages people who aren't necessarily interested in games. It's not a game for the intrinsically entrenched. Another complaint I heard was that the game is too nice. Even when someone like undercuts you on a turn, you still have stuff you can do. You just don't have the thing you wanted to do, and how that's kind of suffocating. And I thought that, this game is not a game that's going to appeal to people who have full-time board game review channels, but it really appeals to me. It's beautiful for a start. It's just like aesthetically so good looking. And that aesthetic beauty is then used to inform mechanical systems. So you can tell at a glance things about the game state that might be a lot harder to control otherwise. It's the same thing that Wingspan does so well. The other thing is that as an economic game, Flamecraft doesn't present to you cutthroat capitalism. It doesn't present the idea of a vision of the accretion of money as being the most important thing. Rather, any market and trade and barter that's happening is happening in a way that improves people's lives and makes them happy. So, instead of a capitalist economic game that's ultimately saying the player with the most money wins, this is a game about using the mechanics of an economics game to make a social game. I really like that. It's not my favorite game of the year in the board game space just because Just One is so good. Just One is so good that last year I wrote an article about it on Christmas Day and put it up on the blog knowing I'll get around to that, and it took a whole year to arrive, and all the way along that period I was thinking I should get myself a copy of Just One. I really should get a copy of Just One. Just One is so good. The worst thing I can say about Just One is that Just One is a game that needs 2 or more other players than myself. I can't just play Just One with my partner. Just One is a game that does need some crowd, but also you could just go from you've never played Just One to finishing your first round in 5 minutes tops. It's incredibly approachable. It's really thinky, and the way it makes me think, like the ways I've had success in Just One have made me feel so clever, and that's great. Finally, there are 3 articles I would like to put forward for you to consider from my blog, and they'll be linked in the description down below. First, I want you to look at the article I wrote about BioShock Infinite after 10 years of consideration. I started my blog in 2013, so I've been very keenly feeling the way that this is a 10-year-old project now. And the person I was then, and the kind of aims I had then, and the kind of deference I gave things back then. BioShock Infinite is a game that definitely deserves a second look, but it's not a very comforting one about video games. Knowing that in 2013 I was writing about a game with some pretty racist ideas in it, as if 2014 wasn't right around the corner. Similarly, for our place in time, I wrote about King's Quest I this year. King's Quest I is one of the oldest visual adventures you're ever going to know about. There's a chance there's some older games from Japan or some other part of the world, I don't know, but in terms of visual character running around in a space having an adventure goes, King's Quest I might be it. King's Quest I came out shortly before I was born. When King's Quest I came out, homosexuality was illegal in a lot of Australia. It's my lifetime that these changes have happened, and King's Quest I is a consideration about how we look at time and how we treat the way we've changed the world in that time. My final article I want to get your attention to is my article about deducing why do trans women love Fallout Vegas. If you're not familiar with this, there is a recurrent thread of discourse with people about how it's just strange just how many trans women love Fallout New Vegas. Isn't that interesting? Well, I thought I'd dig into the meme and see what it's about. And that's that. That was 2023's various game piles and videos in the bag. I hope you've had fun. I hope you've got some stuff you can watch now. And really, you could go back and look at all my videos. They're pretty much all bangers. I don't have any I'm particularly embarrassed about, except in terms of I don't know how to edit video very well, and I timed that a bit bad, or the audio's a bit crap here. But broadly speaking, the points I'm making, I'm very right a lot of the time. We should still eat the rich.